Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Abid Hussain. Welcome to the online classes at SMB QAPS school. Today we will talk about the mechanics, then the branches of the mechanics, as we have the definition of the mechanics, then the definition of the branches of the mechanics here. Mechanics. Actually, mechanics is the branch of physics that is concerned with the behavior of the physical bodies when subjected to the force or displacements. Also, it deals with the matter and investigates the energy. So simply we can say that mechanics is the branch of physics in which we study about the motion of the bodies, and then we discuss about the causes of the motion, whether these bodies have contact forces or these bodies do not have any contact forces. Without any contact forces, these are moving from one place to another place, or these are moving with a reference to the force. So simply we can say that in mechanics we study about the motion of the bodies with reference or without reference of the forces, as already we have discussed this branch and this definition in our first lecture. So mechanics is then divided into the three branches. You have to remind in the mind that mechanics is a branch of physics, and then mechanics has three more branches. So now these are the three branches. Number one, there was the statics. Number two, we have kinematics. And the number three is the dynamics. So these are the three different branches of the mechanics. And here in this lecture, we will discuss more about these three branches of mechanics, that what is the statics, what is the kinematics, and what is the dynamics. So let's move to the first branch of mechanics, that is the statics. So here we have the statics, the first branch of the mechanics. Statics is actually the application of the mathematics and the basic physics. As we are learning here about the physics, to study the forces in materials, in mechanics, in the machines, in the structures, and all these things which we use in our daily life, and more over these forces, as all the bodies which are moving are related to the forces. So forces are of interest to engineers for two reasons. It means that why we are using the forces here, what is the reason of using the forces? So we have the two reasons, main reasons, mostly used by the engineers and the physicists and all these things which are related to these. They have to use forces for these two types are the causes. The cause, they cause the materials to deform or the break, and then second one, they cause things to move. These are the two causes that why they use this to deform, to break, to move, to change their shapes, to these all the things they require the forces. So statics is used to calculate the forces in systems that don't move or move at a constant velocity. So here we have two things. It means that If body is moving, then we use the forces. But here in statics, if the body do not move, it means it's not moving. But if the body is not moving, that means it also have some forces that restrict it to not move from its place. So these forces which are required to maintain the position of a body, these forces are also required here, and these forces have values. So who gives the values to these forces on which basis the body is not moving? These forces are studied under a branch, and that branch is called as the statics. The other thing, it was the first thing that body is not moving from anywhere, or it is at a place where it doesn't change its position. It is at the condition of the rest. But the second thing, if the body is moving with a constant velocity, it means it do not change its position from one place to another place, then it is also again called the condition, and this condition is again studied under the statics, that is the branch of the mechanics here. So these were the two things I think you have to keep in your mind and you have to understand well. So it was about the statics. Whenever body is at the condition of rest or moving with a constant velocity, these both are studied under the statics here. Here again we have the statics in internal reaction. It means determine the internal reactions in a beam. This is an activity for you. Draw correct shear force or the bending moment diagrams, or write equations for the shear force or bending moment as functions of the positions along the beam. It means how much forces are required here to balance a beam at the condition of the rest. So these are the forces which makes the beam in the condition of the rest or in a certain position which we required here. These all the things are required under the branch that is called the statics. So statics has normal reaction and all the forces which are required here. So stable body or any material on a certain position. So these forces, all the forces which are required here, these forces are called as the forces to balance the thing. So these are studied under the statics. As friction is also a force, as generally you have learned about the friction or well known about the friction, that what is the friction. So friction is also a force which is a balancing force. Actually it means that friction is a cause of any moving body to come to go to the rest position. To come to the rest position, there is a certain force which is required here, that is the friction force. Whenever any body is rolling on a floor or road or anything else, then we required a force which is the force from the surface. So this force is called the friction force, and under this force the body moves, stops. So this stop is due to the force which is called the friction here. So here we have the branch which is the dynamics, second branch of the mechanics here. The branch of mechanics that is concerned with the effect of the forces on the motion of a body or a system of the bodies, especially of the forces that do not originate within the system itself, that is the external forces and not the internal ones. It means the forces which are from the outside of the body, they are making its effects on the body, and due to the effects of these forces, if the body is moving or changing its place from one place to another place or from one position to another position, whenever these forces are required, on which basis the body is changing its original position or it's moving from its original position to the certain positions. So for the movement of the body, that is not concerned with the forces, internal forces, but it's only concerned with the outside forces which are from the outside. So these forces which are from the external side, these forces are called the external forces here. And if along to these forces which are from the outside of the outside of the system, within these forces, if the body is moving, these forces are called as the forces which are studied under the branch of mechanics, that is called the dynamics here. As we have the many examples here, like if you are moving any chair from one place to another place, it means that you require the force, but it's not a force from the chair. So now all the forces are called as the forces which are from the outside of the forces. Here we have the external forces. Definition of the external forces here. Force is a mechanical action capable of moving a body initially at the rest. It means if a body is at the condition of the rest, and if we are applying any force on it to change its place or to move it from the condition of rest to the motion, so for this condition, if we require a force from the external side, then second, changing the motion of a body, whether any body is moving, means it's in the condition of the motion, so we require a force to stop it. As I have told you about the friction, that if a body is moving and if we want to stop it, then we require a surface force, and this surface force stops that body, and this is an external force which is required from the surface, rough surface. So this is called the external force, frictional force, both you can say. Okay. Then deforming a body, it means if we are going to change the shape of an object. First we have talked about the positions of the bodies. Now here we are talking about the shapes of the bodies. Deforming, it means we have to change the shapes of the objects. We required again a contact force from the outside. Whether it is a contact force or non-contact force, no worry about it. But if it creates its effects on body, if it creates the effects on the material, then these forces are called as the external forces. Usually think of a force like, as we know that a force is a push or a pull. Then what is a force? Force is a vector quantity because it always has a direction. Force required a direction here. Maybe the force may be the contact force or the field force here. It means contact force, means it has contact with the material on which the force is applied. field force, as we have the gravity force or the magnetic force and the electromagnetic forces and other forces we have. So these all the forces are the field forces here. Now contact forces result for the physical contact between two objects. As I have already told you that if a force is in the contact or touch with the material, then it is called as the contact force. Field forces act between the disconnected objects, also called the action at a distance. So it means if we required a force and it is not with the touch or contact with the object or the material, then this type of the force is called the field force, and these forces do not have any contact with the object on which it is applied here, like the gravity force here. Here we have kinematics. Actually, kinema means the movement, and it's taken from the Greek language. This word is from the Greek language, and its meaning is the movement. So mathematically description of the motion, what do we mean by the motion here, and what are the changes which occur during the motion? It means there should be a change in the position. It may be that there will be interval of the time which is required there. It means there must be the displacement, there must be the velocity, there must be the speed or acceleration, and averages of all the quantities which are required there, that how much they are changing its place, how much they are moving from one place to another place, how they are changing its all these things. So now means if there is a movement in the object with these certain points, these are studied under the branch that is called the kinematics here. So in our next lectures we will discuss about the distance, displacement, then velocity, then speed, then acceleration, and all these things, that how these things are related to the kinematics, and kinematics will define these all the things, that how these things move from one place to another place, and how we can study about the movement of these all the objects here. So I hope you have understood all the things about the mechanics, then its three branches: statics, then the dynamics, and then last one is the kinematics here. So these are the three branches of the mechanics here, and these all the things directly or indirectly were related to the forces and related to the motion of the objects, whether they were moving, whether there was a force required to restrict the objects which were in the condition of the motion, or anything which they were using to move from one place to another place. So